Hello. My character is Kratar Mirat. I'm not a member of E-UNI. I've never been a member of E-UNI. However, a lot of the learning I've done about the game and some of the rounding out of my knowledge has been through the E-UNI wiki and the recorded classes. So I've kind of been one of those backseat people for a long time. It's kind of nice to be here to give this lecture. I've been looking forward to it. So hopefully everyone enjoys it. Just two things real quick. I am an old sailor, so while I try not to cuss, every now and then it does come out. So hopefully nobody is offended by that. And just want to get that out there. And the second thing is that I have this horrible problem where I have to kind of walk around and wave my hands when I talk. So if I don't exactly see the questions in the chat channel as they come up, don't worry about it. I will stop every now and then and kind of look and see what people have questions, and we'll ask like that. So I think that's about it. Okay. Where I wanted to start is I am the director of production for the Unnamed Corporation. It's a relatively new entity because we've just done a bunch of mergers and all kinds of stuff, and it's been a big pain in the butt, but we're finally getting ourselves organized in a single corp for what we're doing. My corp is family owned, and that means that all of the directors are all related by blood, which is kind of a cool thing. Because if one of our guys doesn't do anything, then I just tell my sister to make him sleep on the couch. But it's been a great time playing. We operate Wormhole industry, like this class suggests, and I'm here to talk about that. I don't necessarily have all the answers. I don't think that I'm the most knowledgeable player about anything in EVE, that's for sure. So the best I can do is provide you some of my experience and some of my opinions and a little bit about what we do. Some information I won't be able to give away just because there's a little bit of trade secret, if you will. So I'll do my best to give a general overview. The way we kind of view things is the way I view EVE is that it's kind of the eternal battle between that which is most fun and that which is most profitable. When I started out in EVE, I started out as a miner, and I started out in business, and so that's kind of the side of this I've played. And since we've been in living in wormholes and doing wormhole industry, it's been a big change for me and for a lot of us. We do run a combat security fleet, and we have a guy who runs that whole thing. So questions specifically regarding wormhole combat and PvP aren't really something that I'll field here. Let's see. Okay. Basically, wormholes. Living in a wormhole is a pretty cool experience. I don't know how many people here have ever had a chance to go and spend any serious time inside of a wormhole. It can be a lonely thing because sometimes when you log on, there's no local chat. Well, there is, but nobody uses it. And if some of the other people aren't on, you're kind of in a big empty chunk of space all by yourself. You spend your time living out of player-owned stations, player-owned structures. That can be interesting because it's kind of a communal living, which people have to get used to. You'll have a series of CHAs and SMAs that you keep your ships and your gear in. And unfortunately, everyone gets to share the same ones. So if ever you have someone who decides to go rogue, that can be kind of a downside. In fact, we did just have that recently. We had about 6 billion ISK worth of stuff trashed by someone who decided he didn't want to play with us anymore. Let me see, the industry. Industry in HiSec is it's kind of overcrowded. One of the things that I found early on when I was playing is that all the things that seem to make a lot of money, you had to go out into lower nullsec to do. Just because HiSec is overcrowded, there's a lot of things you can do in HiSec, and I found that those things you can do in HiSec that you can do elsewhere tend to be less profitable elsewhere. So the things that we do in wormholes are the things that you can't do in HiSec. These may be things like any of the structures which you can anchor, which require less than 0.4 security status, such as reactors and certain different drug labs or whatever, what have you, as well as moon mining, all that type of thing. So all that stuff tends to be the most profitable. And when we focus on industry, we focus on those activities which you can't do in high sec, just because it cuts down on the competition. You've got a lot of the big 0-0 corporations who do a lot of industry. In fact, industry tends to be what pays for most of the fleets that are out there. Industry is really where the money comes from, and the people who do it and do it well tend to be very powerful and tend to have a lot of say in a lot of different things. Hang on one second while I pull up my overview here. Yeah, so wormholes. Wormholes kind of brought me back to Eve. They provide a place where you get out there and get the really cool stuff, the good PI, the good, reading something there. The good PI, the good farming, and not necessarily have to compete with the huge blobby fleets like there are out in nullsec space. The no moon mining restriction is kind of a downer. My impression is that was brought on simply to keep some of the huge power blocks from moving completely into wormhole space. But there is no moon mining in wormholes, so unfortunately that's not something we can do. PI is really good in wormholes. We tend to have, of course, we've got the same stuff that you've got in HiSec. We just tend to have a lot richer planets. Being the director of production, I tend to run the PI schemes. We let people do, for the most part, what they want to do. We do train people the concept of opportunity cost. And this falls back into what I was saying about that which you can do in HiSec tends to not be the most profitable. The reality is, in most of the HiSec planets, and this is prior to any of these custom house changes, which we're still feeling out. So for right now, don't mind the custom house changes and how that's going to affect it. But typically in HiSec, a lot of the factory worlds tend to be pretty profitable. People who like to import P1 and produce the next step and ship it out. But unfortunately, most of the planets are over-harvested, and so your raw P1 material just isn't that great. It's hard to find a good planet that has anything worth mining. Well, out in wormhole space, it's quite exactly the opposite. The truth is there's enough raw material on most of the planets that mining that is very lucrative. In fact, far more lucrative than producing P2 or P3 materials. So the vast majority of what we produce is P1 material and ship it out, and we make more money that way. And a lot of people bring up the question of tower fuel, but again, I go back to opportunity costs and to show that if you do the math on it, you actually make money by shipping out the P1 material and buying your fuel. It's that much more profitable. The planets are pretty good. I've seen a lot of numbers thrown around on the forums and different boards. A lot of people like to talk. I've found a realistic goal for out in wormhole space is you can probably count on about just harvesting P1 material. You can probably count on between 2 and 3 million a day per planet. So that gives you an idea of what kind of resources we have. Sorry, I'm people messaging me here. Not you guys, but something else. Moving right along. The biggest challenge to wormhole industry, and this is where most of my discussion is gonna focus, is actually in logistics, because that's really where it's challenging. Choosing the wormhole you're going to operate out of, being able to move in, these are all big questions. There are some wormhole spaces out there that are unoccupied, and you can find and you can move in. It's not what we did. We actually we scouted for 6 weeks, probably hundreds of different wormholes, looking for the requirements that looking for one that satisfied our requirements, which was we wanted certain static exits. And so we had some requirements on statics. And once we found some holes that did, we took a look. We see, okay, how big is it? Who's in here? And we ended up finding a really good wormhole system that we really liked. Unfortunately, there was a corp in there at the time. and they had a few things set up, and we studied their motions and their people for a few weeks before we made ourselves known, and then in one fell swoop we had 2 towers up before they knew what was going on, and actually they gave up. They just ran, and we were able to blow up stuff and take their ships. And so that's how we moved into our wormhole. So it isn't all fun and games. Some of it is a little bit of scare tactic and doing your homework. But once we're in the wormhole, bringing stuff in and getting stuff out. As most people probably know, when you're talking class 1, class 2, class 3 wormholes, mass limits become an issue. You can't bring freighters through. In fact, you can't bring anything bigger than about an orca through. And so it becomes interesting on how to ship in all your goods, especially if you're going to set up a bunch of towers. And we actually, at this point in time, we have towered or anchored a tower on every single moon inside the wormhole system. This is kind of key because this means that nobody else can come into the wormhole and drop a tower. And that's where a lot of our security comes from, is knowing that we've actually been able to lock down the system. And of course, we do have ship assembly arrays for building our cap fleet, and we've got a standing cap fleet. So we've got a pretty good defensive position. Yes, very, very expensive. In fact, I'm not going to go into money figures here. I'm not going to advertise that stuff out. But it is incredibly expensive. One of the things that made this possible to start up is a single person. He's been playing Eve for, as long as I've known about it and longer. He's actually a tax accountant in real life. He's my brother-in-law. And the thing that he loves to do is market analysis. And so he's kind of the guy who runs our business side of things. Basically does our market analysis and figures out what products we should be making and what we're going to make the most profit on, which is a big part of industry, is being able to analyze the market. And having somebody who's good at that is really key, because to be honest with you, it takes hours. It takes hours of study and reading into 0-0 politics and who's attacking who and what things were lost and what supplies are going to stop being produced, and predict the market 2 months out. And it's pretty cool. He's pretty good at it, and we've made a lot of money on that. Let me see, where was I before that? Oh yeah. So we've locked down the hole. And so we're free to produce. Producing takes multiple forms. There's gas cloud harvesting, which we do. One of our guys in particular likes to go out and do that. It can be a little dangerous if you don't have a cap fleet running around. That's a combat air patrol. But he goes out, he farms all the gas. We've got a couple of guys who do the sleeper complexes. We do have a static to a class 3. So, we'll farm the sleeper complexes in the class 3 and farm whomever is not intelligent enough to be in a cloaky ship or something. We've been known to nab people going for their PI. But the majority of what we do is production at the towers, and that's really where I come in. Let's see. A lot of you guys have probably gotten into component assembly, things like that. I don't know how many of you have ever run reactors and reactor farms, but those are pretty profitable depending on what things you produce. Just to give an idea, we right now, my corporation, not to go into specifics about the particular product, but there's one type of material used in Tech 3 production, of which, if you look at the JITA market, the RENS market, the HEC market, the Dodixie market, and the Amar market all put together, so I think as of yesterday, it was 47% of all of that material comes from my corporation. That's on those markets. It's kind of a niche we found, and we're really good at it. We produce it like crazy. It sells like crazy, and we're happy doing it. Which is why I don't give specifics out, but you guys are all smart. You can figure out where to go from there. But just to give an idea, that's the kind of profitability that there is in wormholes, is the ability to make stuff, ship it out, and have nobody screw with you. Because most of the people who come into this wormhole, they have no idea what we're doing. They throw up D-scan, they look around. Sure, they see towers, they see force fields, because they're all good players who've got their overviews set up correctly. Maybe they'll see some assembly arrays, some refining arrays. They'll see a bunch of SMAs in different places, and they don't really have any idea what we're doing or where we're doing it. And it's not really an indication of how much money we're able to produce. That's an important thing. Likewise, if you guys noticed, I had Kato, or Kato, however you pronounce his name. I had him refrain from posting my information up on the wiki, and that's merely just because I don't want to unnecessarily have names and corp names out there posted, because truth is, attention tends to be bad for business. We like to keep things quiet. We like to keep things productive. We do run a 23/7 operation, so anytime our lines go down, we're not happy. I do come from a manufacturing background myself professionally, so that's part of why I've been the one to write all of our SOPs. Let's see. We run like a business. Our corp is entirely designed around a business model which pays salaries for different jobs that people have. It's owned by the board of directors, each of whom has made significant cash, or rather ISK, buy-ins to the corporation, owns a certain number of shares. The corporation takes a cut of all production that's made in the Wormhole, and the shareholders are paid from that cut, as well as if any of the shareholders have jobs themselves, they're paid for that. Our model is to try to entice people to want to do our jobs. We tend to pay based on what we calculate out as a better ISK per hour than anything else they could be doing, because that's really what we value, is the player hour. And I think that when you get into really a lot of the insides of production, that's kind of one of the things you find, is that it's kind of nice to be able to have stuff that runs while you're offline. That's one of the things I'm a huge fan of. I'm a huge fan of making ISK while I'm not in the game. I might be able to make a little bit more per hour if I were actively doing something in the game. But when I can come on for half an hour and set my PI, and literally I think this character, his PI takes me about 15 to 20 minutes to reset. I never have to move my command centers, or my extractor control units. We've got rich enough planets that within reach of each of them I can just continue to cycle. So I'll come on twice a week and reset my PI cycles. That takes about 15 minutes. So for 15 minutes a week, I end up making, I don't know, it probably comes out to 150 million a week, roughly speaking. So that's pretty good for 15 minutes. I mean, that's about the highest ISK per player hour you can get. Now, you can't get that any higher, really, because that's all you're going to get out of it. But that's the type of thing I like, and that's how we've set up our industry, is for people who are willing to come on. They put in their half an hour to do the maintenance on their, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's a reactor, whether it's tower fueling. We pay for people to manage towers and manage the fuel in the towers, make sure the defenses are set correctly, depending on what equipment is online. And so we base that all off on the player hour, and we think that's a pretty good business model. I don't know how other companies or corps that are doing industry out in Wormhole space, or even in nullsec, may be doing it. I've never been in another one. Unlike a lot of the other Wormhole corps, I know you guys deal with Trekkie a lot, and I know that I know lead farmers I've seen on your forums. So I know there's a bunch of other Wormhole corporations who've been around. Unlike most of those guys, we aren't really focused on a bunch of people being online, going through and shooting stuff. 9 times out of 10, there's 1 or 2 people on doing whatever it is that they do for business, and that's it. It ends up being kind of like, on the weekend we'll pop 2 or 3 K162s, in no time, and it ends up kind of being like we're huddling behind the force fields while there's a war going on out there, and we're actually fine with that. We try not to attract too much attention, and that I think's been key to our ability to do business. So, having said that, we have all the towers up and we do all of our manufacturing. It brings to question, the logistics of shipping stuff in, which is a big part of it. We do have several freighter pilots in a sister corporation, which is not in our alliance, in order to protect it from Wardeck, that is out in Empire space and does all of our freighter shipments. So when we decide we're going to do a resupply op, we'll find our exit. The freighters will load up with whatever the new goodies are, and they'll make their way there. And then we basically, it's not too complicated. We run a simple fleet op, mostly at around 5s that will jump in and out and get all the goods, bring them all back in. One of the keys is that we will run interdiction fleets. We will run eyes in, eyes out to keep an eye on anything in the system, anything in the wormhole. We are combat ready at any given time. We also close the doors. That's a big thing. I don't know how many of you guys have ever lived in wormhole space, but there are some doors that are just scary to have open. Every now and then you'll log on and you'll find you have a K162 that's opened from a sovereign nullsec, and that's always kind of intimidating. So it's nice to know how to close wormholes. I won't go into the mathematics involved in it, but you need a few Orca pilots and a scratch paper in the in-game calculator, and it takes only about 3 or 4 minutes actually to close a wormhole. Let's see. Let me check my. Well, before I check my overview, does anyone have any burning questions they'd like to ask? I'm looking at the chat channel. Actually, no. We have players who run sites all the time. We don't make it necessarily an official activity. In other words, anyone who's in the wormhole is free to run sites at their own pace, their own time, whatever ships they want to run in. If they want to get together with other people, they'll do that. Most of our sites are run, and we do in fact put together more organized fleets to go farm our neighboring Class 3 for those sites. We're in a Class 2 wormhole, a Class 2, which is kind of key, just so you know the layout. But so we will farm the sites in our neighboring Class 3 for stuff like that. And typically, this brings up a good point. A lot of people like to play. They like to go farm the sleeper sites. They like to do gas mining. Maybe they'll go mine the grav sites, things like that. One of the biggest things, if you're running a wormhole business, visibility is a big problem for you. You don't want anyone having any idea, A, that you're in there, B, that you're doing anything profitable. And the more traffic you have in and out of your wormhole system is just not good. So one of the biggest things that we've had to do is learn how to discourage what we call black market logistics trains, which is, individuals, people from our own corporation who farm sleeper sites or and want to go out and sell their salvage, or they want to, go grab skill books, these types of things. While it is nice to be able to do that yourself, it's just too much risk for the company based on the number of people jumping in and out of the holes. If for instance one of our Empire statics wasn't already spawned and somebody jumps to it to go get themselves a skill book, well, guess what? Now there's an open K162 on the other side of it that people can use to get in, and it's just a bad day. So we've managed to set up a system by which we will do all the shopping for anybody who wants it. They can submit requests for any skill books they want, the equipment, the modules, all that's shipped in and delivered to a common hangar to which everyone has access. So they can all come in and grab it when it gets in, as well as any production that people produce, whether it's sleeper salvage. Anytime they produce it, we have a drop box where they can drop it off, and we will actually take it and we will sell it. The company does take a small cut of that because we're putting the work in to sell it, but it saves everyone the time and it saves the company the trouble of having people go in and out. And everyone's liked it so far, and it's worked out really well. Do you do any reverse engineering? I don't personally. We have some people who like to play around in that. But as of right now, I'm kind of a profit Nazi, and the most profitable thing we do is not reverse engineering. And so with the limited CPU and power grid we have on towers, I kind of mandate that based on how profitable we are right now, that we be doing all lines a specific thing. So right now I don't have any facilities for people to be doing reverse engineering. New customs office. Um, yeah, the new customs office thing is pretty cool. I'm a fan. I have a feeling that yeah, the only way that it would affect Wormhole specifically is that it depends on how defensive the customs offices are. It'll be annoying if all the Sunday fleets come flying through and take pot shots at our custom houses. That'll be kind of annoying. But if they're defensive enough not to be dropped by one or two strategic cruisers or something, then I'm not going to worry about it. I do think it's gonna raise the price of our PI. So I think in the long run, the P1 material is going to get more expensive, which is good for us because that's the majority of what we produce. So I think it's going to have a positive effect on the profitability of PI and wormholes. As far as the day-to-day operations of it, I don't think it's going to matter. It will actually, however, make it easier for people to try to gank at customs houses because there's only going to be one at each planet. The last thing I've read is didn't say there was going to be fuel for customs offices. They did say they were going to be mats required to construct it, but they didn't mention any fuel for continued operation. Okay, give me a second from the questions. Let me continue because there's a few things that I wanted to get out before I go back into that. Let's talk about what you look for in a wormhole. We chose a wormhole based on its static exits and based on the number of moons, for obvious reasons. The number of moons gives us the ability to lock down the wormhole, and the static exits give us either safe paths out to Empire space to where we want to go, or to profitable wormholes. To the best of my knowledge, from trolling a lot of forums, I don't know that anyone has. Oh, okay. Sorry, I guess I haven't. Let me cover static exits for a second. Wormhole space is each different wormhole system has a certain number of static exits, which means they will always have a wormhole exit to a certain area. For instance, if you are in a wormhole that has a nullsec static, that means that at any given time, 23/7 inside that wormhole system, there will be a wormhole that will lead to nullsec space. Now, you don't know what nullsec system that's going to be. It could be sovereign nullsec, it could be NPC nullsec, it could be on one side of Empire, it could be on the other side of Empire. You don't know, but you do know that you're always going to have a nullsec exit. There are some wormhole systems that have high-sec exits, which means that you're always going to have a wormhole that leads to high-security space. Again, you don't know what system that's going to be, but you're guaranteed that it's going to be 0.5 or higher security status. Our wormhole has 2 static exits. Okay, let me finish what I was saying here, and then I'll answer that question. Our wormhole has 2 static exits. One of them is into a Class 3 wormhole, and one of them is out into Empire space. We analyzed what we wanted, whether we wanted null, low, high sec, and we found a good wormhole. But that was one of the important things that we were looking for. To identify static exits, I don't want to go into too much detail on that. If you look at, I think there's some statistics on Dotland that talks about it, but about which system have static exits. There's also some tricks you can use depending on what wormhole system you're in. When you're in a particular wormhole system, you get used to the signal strength of your different wormholes. And actually, in our wormhole system, we can, from a single probe at a 34 AU range, based on the signal strength of returns, I can tell you exactly what wormhole is our high static exit or a high sec static exit, and which is our Class 3, and which ones are other ones that we've spawned and or K162s. It's a little bit more detailed than I'll get into right now as far as working with that. I'm sorry, I have a knock at the door. Give me one moment and I will be right back. Sorry about that, magazine sellers. Okay, yeah, as far as choosing a system. The static exits are a big deal. We looked at the number of moons because we wanted to be able to set up all the towers and lock down the hull, and design a cap fleet. So that's those are some of the things we chose when we looked for. I don't know of anyone that's developed a Class 2 like we have. We spend a lot of time trolling forums, not really trolling necessarily, but skimming the forums and seeing what other people are talking about, what other people are doing. But But like I said, it's our business plan. We do use Eve.lan a lot to find out the statistics on our wormhole, who's jumped in, who's jumped out. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but that's something that I recommend looking up if you ever get into wormhole life. Okay, let me check my over. All right. Let's see. As far as the particulars of what we produce, I don't want to get into too much detail. I think I've covered most of what's required there. It's really market analysis. It's taking a look at what people are paying for and what's being produced and what's not being produced. We run a lot of money in and out of this wormhole. We've invested a lot in it, and there's a lot of people serious about it. Our shipments in and out are probably, I don't know. I think last time we did a shipment of product out, and we do about once a week. The product we shipped out was probably 10 billion worth of ISK, 10 billion ISK worth of product, and we produce that about every week. And that's not including the amount that we put into it, so our profit is less than that. But that's about the amount of production that we're doing. And for a small group, that's pretty good. And we've had our losses. Like I said, we did have earlier in our days, we did have one pilot who is Ezekiel, that is one way you could do it. Yes. We had one pilot who, if he wasn't related by blood, I would have killed him. Who managed to AFK a freighter when we were first building the wormhole, and he managed to get his freighter suicide ganked with was it 1 or 2 Dread Garista towers in there? Yeah, I think there was a large Dread Garista tower in there, which is a Caldari faction tower, and there was probably the rest of it was filled with tower fuel and faction guns and modules. We run very expensive towers. We do save on fuel costs that way, and we do tend to intimidate anyone who comes into the wormhole in that way. So we've had our losses that way. We did also have someone who got fed up with the fact that he wasn't given the accesses, the security accesses that he wanted, and felt as though he was being marginalized, which may or may not have been the case. Unfortunately, there was a painful merger that happened. But he decided to go rogue and ended up trashing 6 billion worth of ships. Ejected them from an SMA and blew them up. So we've had our losses. Yeah, fortunately, those were mostly personal ships. I say fortunately, which means it didn't affect the company bottom line very much. But it was rather painful. But we managed to pay that back, and the company covered the cost to anyone who lost ships. And it actually identified a loophole in our security that we weren't aware of. Which brings me into the next part of my thing is security. This becomes a huge thing. Wormhole space is a dangerous place. It's effectively nullsec without all of without the corporations. I liken nullsec to more like gangland, like gang warfare. You're always on somebody's turf when you're out in nullsec, and so there's an endless supply of friends and people who may fight on a daily basis, but all of them will band together if they see someone new stepping onto their turf. Low sec is more like a war zone. You just dodging bullets going through there. Wormhole space is I don't know. It's kind of a It's kind of a new frontier. Not only do you have the roaming fleets that come through, they tend to be smaller fleets. They tend to be high power. You get a lot of strategic cruisers. You get a lot of cov-ops. You get a lot of. We don't see too many full battleship fleets come through. You see the occasional farmer come in with a Drake or something for some sleepers. And believe it or not, oftentimes we'll leave them alone. Of course, that's at whoever's on's discretion, but security becomes an issue because now you have to worry not only about the people that are coming through the wormhole, but you also have to worry about corporate theft because we're a particularly good target for corporate theft. And I've spent some time listening to some of the and if you guys haven't, I'd recommend it. Some of the corp theft and the darker side of Eve classes you guys have recorded on your wiki. And there's some scary people there, man. We've been working at this for a long time, and so security has become a big thing for us, not only from people that are going through, but from our own court mates. And when you're running a small business with people that are running manufacturing or running reactors or running towers, you put a lot of trust into people. You put a lot of trust, as well as there's some communal living part of that people have access to other people's stuff. And so security becomes a big deal. And once you get there, you find that CCP could use a little work on their security measures for POSs. It's difficult to set security quite the way we want it, and unfortunately we've gotten to the point where we have to have passworded force fields to compartmentalize losses, because some of the security settings are universal for SMAs and CHAs. So if I set access to a particular person so that they can refuel a tower and or access the SMAs, well, then they can do it at every tower. And so you gotta get really good with some of those interfaces and learning that. And we've spent a lot of time with people flying around trying to open stuff and setting our security. So it's one aspect of the game that you just really kind of get to, and once you do, you find that it's not perfected yet. They're working on it, but it's not perfected yet. Some of the buttons aren't very clear. So it's one of the things I would caution anyone interested in getting out into wormhole space and industry is you got to spend some time working on your security. You got to set all the different permissions and find a bunch of people to help you and set roles on them and get them to go try. Get them to go try opening your containers. Get them to go try pulling stuff out. One thing we found is that someone can, in fact, man one of the tower guns. If people aren't sure, with the skill star-based defense management, you can actually man tower guns. That's one of the things that we require from anyone who works in our wormhole. They don't have to have it when they move in, but they have to work toward it. But you can actually take control of a station gun and blow up the other station guns around it. You can actually do that. There's not much you can do to prevent it. So just some of the little loopholes that CCP has left in there, either on purpose or not. But that's a lot of what we've done, and a lot of the work that we've put in is figuring that out. Do you produce with copies and leave the originals in more secure space? No. Put it this way. Most of our stuff, our expensive stuff, is secured behind our towers, and we do have one tab on the CHAs that is director-only access, as well as we have one tower which is director-only access because we're the only ones that have the force field password. We will store there. The reality is that if someone can come in and blow up a bunch of our towers, we're going to lose a lot more than the cost of our blueprints. In fact, blueprints are a small portion of the cost that we have. But that's a good question. You can certainly run that way. However it's convenient for you. The only thing about it is the towers give you access to your copy slots and stuff. So if it depends on, if you have a tower anchored in high sec, maybe you could do your copying out there and just bring the copies out. That might work. But if you don't have a tower in high sec, then the copy slots at your stations is one of the biggest advantages you have. So that's kind of something to be able to take advantage of. Okay. Any more questions? Yeah, Sid's right. The blueprints are actually, they're not jump change. They're expensive, but they're a small portion of all of the stuff that we have. In truth, the most expensive thing is of course our product, which is worth more than the materials that make it. But those materials are also very expensive, as well as tower fuel, especially these days. Tower fuel is very expensive. Figure we've got 12 towers running, and we never have less than a 30 to 40 day supply for the entire wormhole of tower fuel in there. So that dwarfs the cost of any blueprints, the cost in tower fuel. But we found that it's just, in the event that we find someone who wants to wait us out and try to starve us, yes, 12 towers. In the event that we have someone who wants to starve us, we've got enough they'll have to try to starve us for a month or so before it starts to affect us. And even then, it's going to be hard for them to do it based on some of the strategies we have for getting stuff in and out. One thing I'll say, wormhole life, it's interesting. It's cool. For those of you who may have done fleets going into wormhole space, there's, of course, there's nobody there. It doesn't show who's in the system in local chat, so there may always be someone there, and you have to always have that in mind. You have to get good with your D-scan. You have to get good with your probes. You have to learn how to be defensive. As an example, it was just the other day that, of course, went through. It wasn't me, but someone from our corp went through was just having fun, went out into the class 3 static and went through to go see what was going on in the class 3. And, there was a couple towers in system, and there was, one person system. He, was cloaked, so he flew nearby and took a look what the person was doing, and he's hanging around behind force fields. And then, this person decided to jump into Nidoron 5. And lo and behold, went warping off directly toward a planet. Well, as anyone would know, this clearly means he's going on a PI run. So, let's just say that PI run didn't turn out all that well for him. He got blown up and potted, which in wormhole space puts you back out into Empire. So hopefully there was someone else in his wormhole that can tell him how to get back in, because, otherwise he just had a really bad day. So living in wormhole space, especially when you don't necessarily have the skills for some of the stealthy ships, is tricky. You gotta learn how to do it. Anyone who wants to run PI in our corporation is required to run it in a deep space transport or a blockade runner. We'll allow either. I personally use a deep space transport because I've got enough skills to get the align times down, and you throw a warp core stabilizer on one of the low slots, and they'll have to have 4 points on you to lock you down, which is unlikely. It'll happen if there's a concerted effort, but it's just unlikely. So you got to get used to some of that, as well as when you're doing sleeper complexes, when you're doing all these things. There's a lot of just being able to be aware. You've always got your D scanner up. You're always seeing what's going on around you. You've got an awareness of what's going on. That's a good idea. Everything that belongs to our company is required to be in accordance with a certain naming convention, so that on D-Scan, you can instantly see any ship that is ours versus is not ours. Of course, most of you've probably seen some really bizarre ASCII characters on the front of ship names, and that's generally what that is. It's an attempt to make sure that your ship names are readily recognizable on D-Scan, so within, in much less time than it would take to look at the ship type and ask in your chat, hey, is this you guys? We know immediately whether there's a ship on D-Scan that's ours or not. And so conventions like that help. Knowing how to make bookmarks and safe spots is important. Knowing how to warp from celestial to celestial, drop bookmarks, and go 2 or 3 levels in to make sure you got a good safe spot. That's all important. We require Iteron 5, simply because it's the best industrial out there. You can get it upwards of 40,000 cubic meters. Pretty easily. We don't, without containers, you can get it over 40,000 cubic meters, which is key because it's a nice round number. And based on the frequency that we do resupply ops, we've calculated down to the cubic meter exactly how many loads we need for each individual tower, and we know exactly how many trips it's going to take us. And, we run our resupply ops in full fleet formation, which is probably less kind of strict than most of your uni fleet stuff, as I've read. But we do all of we run our standard fleet formations. We've got all our scouts and all that. So, only they're industrial fleets instead of combat fleets. So you're hauling expensive, very, very expensive stuff, and it's important to know what you're doing and be aware. People have roles. People are watching D-Scan. People are watching the system. And just the other day, we had to do a resupply op through, I don't know how to say it, Go, whatever it is, the Minmatar newbie zone. Talk about a freaky resupply op. There's all of 40 people in system, and every one of them has scanner probes out. So that was kind of intimidating. But it was fun, and that's the best things about wormhole industry is the it can be boring when all you've got going is manufacturing jobs, but a lot of the logistics and the resupply ops and being secure with how you do that and designing the system that works, that's where a lot of the fun comes in. And like I said, it doesn't take as many hours as people would think, because you come on, you reset your stuff, and you log off, you know. One of the things that I told to the uni guys when I first came on here and wanted to do this lecture was that I thought it was it's a pretty good establishment, the university. You guys have produced a lot of good players out there. I'm always flying around seeing, whether or not I'm seeing uni people, I'm seeing people who have Eve University in their corp history. And so for people that are interested in wormhole industry and have any questions, go ahead and add me as a contact. Take my name down. At some point in the future, we will be looking for some additional people. But we want to get all things situated following our merger before we do that. But we will be looking for some more people. So anyone interested can feel free to contact me. I'll be the sole point of contact for that. But yeah, other than that, it's fun. It's all the industry stuff you like, only it's out in more dangerous space. Let's see. I've covered everything that was in my my lecture notes, so I'll field any questions you guys got. Yeah, go for it. Shoot. Good question. Great question, in fact. Put it this way. If there's a large enough group of people that want to take down a tower, the tower's coming down. So the only thing you can do to really establish your defensive posture is to try to minimize your visibility so that the really big blobs don't know you're there. We do that by being quiet. I don't like my name or my corp name to be on forum posts, things like that, because it's too easy. They're there for all time. Who knows who comes and looks at it? Even though there's a limited amount of info they can get from that, it's just a practice, and I try to practice what I preach. So, you also want to try and analyze how many accounts it would take. Based on some estimates in the history, and we've got a bunch of people who've done some wormhole pos bashing before. As I said, we were ready to do that when we moved in. We set up try to resist upwards of 20 account fleets. So a fleet of less than about 20 accounts is going to have a lot of difficulty taking down one of our towers. And we do that by how many of you have heard the term Death Star outside of Star Wars? I don't know why I asked that question. I'm really not going to wait to count people who answer, but basically, Death Star. Yes, DEATH. A Death Star is basically a tower that's engineered to be pretty massive, pretty defensive, and every one of our towers is what I would consider a Death Star. In fact, every one of our towers is ridiculous. I've never seen a tower like it in the game. We do run, most of our towers are running our production, and so you want a lot of CPU. Guns and defenses take a lot of power grid, so there's a balance there between what type of tower you're going to use and when you pick your tower, what you're going to run. We take the philosophy that we want it that our whole goal and our number one deterrent to people coming in and trying to take us down is that it's not worth it to them. Whatever we can do, and this should ring familiar because this is what E-UNI does with their WARF standard operating procedure. It's the same mentality. We want to make sure that it is the least pleasant experience in the history of Eve for someone to come in and take down one of our towers. So we are always at all time on the towers trying to run definitely at least 3 rainbows, which is going to really cut down on the amount of damage people can do. All of our guns are pretty savage. And basically we just make sure that you're going to lose more than you're going to gain if you come to attack. So, yes, Sid, good observation. And we make sure that you're going to lose as much as you're going to try and gain if you come and attack one of our towers. And it's going to take a long time. We do split up our tower types. They're not all DGs. We run, I think we run 8 or 9 DGs, and the rest are Dark Bloods. And that's probably more of a trade secret than I should have given away, but the Dark Bloods are really good defensive hardpoints. You can run just a ton of stuff on those. Ton of guns, a ton of defensive measures. And I just, woe is the fleet that wants to take one of those things down, because you better be organized. Especially since in a Class 2 they can't bring a capital ship fleet through. So they're going to be doing it in battleship. Not that you can't do it in battleships, they can, so they come in their battleships and they won't try and assault something. But they're not only going to have to deal with the Death Star, they're also going to have to deal with our capital ship fleet, which will amass very quickly, and is pretty substantial. So it's an unpleasant day for people who want to do that. But the ultimate deterrent is visibility. Just don't let them want to attack you. Don't let them see you shipping stuff out. Don't get your name out there. Don't spread that. And that's the best defense. It's a good question, Yerth. Being that we're in a Class 2, we don't have any wormhole effects. But wormhole effects is definitely something you would want to consider. I can't say this with certainty, but it's my opinion that we wouldn't have been able to pull this off in a Class 4. It's Class 4s and above get so much attention because of their profitability from sleeper sites, that there's just too many trigger happy people coming through. So the question about whether or not you're gonna look for that's an important decision. We would like, in our corporate future, one of our goals is to get a second wormhole. We would like to occupy Class 3. We're determining what kind of monetary investment it would take to do that, and what things we would be looking for. But that's one of our goals, as well as one of our other goals is that we are working through some deals to see if we can get a partner to give us a small chunk of sovereign nullsec space to be a super capital producer. So we've got a few things we're running for the future of our business, and again, that's our business plan. It isn't necessarily the same business plan as that a lot of other people have. But like I said, that's the best I can talk about. So as far as if you wanted to make your home in a Class 4 with all kinds of stuff, it's going to have to be something you look at. Z4. That's an interesting question. It's a good question. The problem you're going to run into. The cost is huge. The problem you're going to run into with 3 to 4 accounts is logistics. If you're going to set up a single POS somewhere, that's fine. You're going to be fine with 3 to 4 accounts. You could probably even, with 3 to 4 accounts, you could probably even do 2 or 3 towers. You're going to be working. You're going to be working if they're all your accounts, or if there's 3 or 4 people, you guys are going to have to figure it out. But more than that, and you're going to have trouble shipping. Because as it is, to run, I mean, we're kind of we're a bigger operation, but we're bringing in a full freighter at a minimum a week. Worth of materials for production as well as for fuel for the towers. And shipping all that through in Iteron 5s takes a lot of practice and a lot of time. And it's one of the competitive edges that we have over other people that are doing this, is we've become very good at doing that. And it's one of the things that you're going to have to practice is how you would be able to transfer. So one of the things you would look at, I can't tell you how much it would cost because it's all going to depend. We chose faction towers. A lot of the decision for that was in the fuel costs. Not just the fuel cost, which takes a while to recoup, but also in the fuel load. Because they use less fuel, it costs less to fuel them, but it's also less to ship. And that's a big deal. And so that's one of the things we looked at is, okay, how much fuel are we going to have to ship in, and measure it in tonnage. Take a look at how many cubic meters of stuff are you going to have to move in, how often, and how long is that going to take you. So that's one of the things that's going to determine whether or not you can run it is whether or not you can refuel it. The second question is those 3-4 accounts, in my opinion, you need to have those, all 3 or all 4 of those accounts, if you're going to be that small, all have to be Orca pilots. Reason being because when it comes time to resupply, you don't always necessarily have time to wait for a good exit to open. So sometimes you have to crash your statics and probe a new one, find out where it is, crash it, probe a new one, find out where it is, crash it, until you get a good hole, to be able to restock through. Again, in our case, there's a high sec static, so we keep that one shut down normally. We're crashing it all the time to make sure that it's we're not visible, but we've always got one there. And so those orcas give you the ability to crash those wormholes really quickly and really effectively, and it cuts it down. The time it takes us to find the high sec static exit, determine whether we like it or not, crash the hole. We can do that entire process, and if we don't like it, crash the hole. We can do that. We pull off that entire process in under 5 minutes. So, like I said, we've gotten really good at it. We got the right people to do it, and that's a big part of the investment. Cash-wise, look at the cost of the tower. Look at the cost of fuel per month. Figure it's going to take you a little while to set it up. Then you've got your CHAs, your SMAs, and just start adding up the cost. It's expensive. I mean, you need to be probably, in my opinion, you need to be a couple billionaire, simply because you need to be defensive. It's not a high-sec tower. You can't just set it up and hope no one attacks you. Cycle, that's a good question. If you end up on the wrong side of the hole, we've got people in the hole, so basically you're just stuck waiting until they get the next exit, and then fly to it and go back in. That's the way it works. We're pretty good. I think once we've had someone trapped outside the hole, and it was a mistake. If you understand wormholes and you understand the mass, the statements that they give you show info on them, and you understand what those numbers mean, you can pretty accurately get it. Orcas with micro warp drives on them give you the option to fly the Orca through with or without the micro warp drive, and based on that, you can get pretty accurate, and you know when you're going to crash it, and you know exactly how many ships it's going to take, and you don't trap anyone outside. And that's one of the things you have to practice and be good at. Sid, generally they respawn right away. Sometimes it's a couple of minutes till the server catches up and spawns it for you. But generally it's right away. So yeah, as soon as it crashes, we're already probing for the next one. Tark, can a one Orca crash? What crashes a hole is the amount of mass that's traveled through it. You can crash a hole in a frigate. It's just going to take a long time. The reason we use multiples is to make it faster. For those who don't know, there is a session timer or a cooldown timer, as I refer to them, since I'm kind of an old Warcraft player. There's a cooldown timer. So once you jump through and then you jump back, you're on a 4-minute timer. That can be kind of annoying when you're trying to close a hole. So having enough orcas to be able to close it without waiting that 4 minutes is a real boon. It is a lot of work, but I'll tell you what, the amount of money we make, to us, it is worth it. As far as jumping in with a micro warp drive, we always make the last jump in with a micro warp drive, whether or not it's required, because, well, why not? Crash it. But really, the whole point is just to understand what the micro warp drive does to the mass of your ship, and how that's going to affect the mass of the wormhole, the mass limits, or not the mass limits, but the degradation. I might post in the work fair. Again, visibility is a question for us, which is kind of why I made a point to saying that if you're interested, if you want to keep in touch, make sure to add me, and I'll get a message that you added me, and I tend to look around at forums. I tend to be around, so I will have the names of everyone who was interested from this class who added me as a contact. And if I have a need, I'll contact those people directly. I don't like posting because I don't like the name of the corp out there, but I may decide that I'm being a little too anal and drop that requirement. I don't have a time frame because it's going to depend on how much work I can get done. We've got one or two things we want to do. We had a merger, and we've had to basically we started out as a couple different corporations, and we merged into one, and we've had to pull a bunch of stuff down and put it back up again to get it in the right corporation. It's been a big pain in the butt. So we're finishing that out and making sure that our security is all set before we go recruiting. I'm hoping within a month we'll be looking for people. So more on that later. As far as skill requirements, you got to be wormhole ready. Wormhole ready. You should be able to fly Covops. You should have at least the capacity to field 7 probes. You should understand the risk you're taking. As far as what I've listed, I've written up job descriptions for our jobs, and I listed that you need to have a racial industrial 5. And if that racial industrial 5 is anything other than Galente industrial 5, then once you're in the hull, you need to be training Galente industrial 5. And the reason, of course, is because we centralize our fleets on Iteron 5s. We have a full fleet of Tech 2 raid company Iteron 5s that we use for resupply ops. The Orca is nice. It's a long train though. If people aren't miners, if they haven't gone down the mining barge road and don't have a Hulk, then that's an Orca pilot would not get hired just for being an Orca pilot. These are all, we will hire the right person. The question as I'm answering it is what skills should that person make sure they have or train. The other skills, let's see, they should have their planetary interaction skills at least all at 4, except for remote sensing. That one only needs to be at 3. They should have, let's see, what else? I don't have it in front of me. What else did I list? They should have anchoring 3. And if you want a position as a tower manager, as a POS manager, which is one of our higher paying positions, which is where you actually get a tower of your own to manage the fuel and the reactions, you need to be training up for Star-Based Defense 4. Which requires anchoring 5, which is the most boring, gruesome train in the history of EVE because it does absolutely nothing for you other than get you to Star-Based Defense. I really wish they'd put something in where levels of anchoring reduce the anchoring and unanchoring time of structures, because God, that skill is just useless to train. But you need to have anchoring 3, which is in your corporation management section. Let me see. I've heard that there are some times of no activity in Wormhole. Is that true? I don't understand the question. You mean times when there's just not a lot of people in there? Well, there's plenty of times when there's nothing going on in the hole. Well, put it this way. Everyone in our Wormhole is either in there because they're part of our combat security fleet and they want to farm the class 3 and they want to do stuff like that, and so they're usually on together. The industrial types, yeah, there's plenty of times when nobody else is on. You'll come on to refuel something or restart your processes or reset your PI, and there'll be nobody else on. Yeah, that happens a lot. In fact, to be honest with you, more of my time in game is spent on an Alton Empire space doing research and doing stuff, and I like agent missions, so doing some of that stuff and just having fun. I actually spend more time on that character than I do on this one because I've got everything that I do tuned down to a minimal. That this is kind of the industry becomes that which funds the rest of your game. One of the things that some of us are shooting for is we'd like to be able to have everyone in the corp make enough money to fund a full covert Tech 3 strategic cruiser PvP fleet, a gang more like, just to run around and have some fun. We'd like to make sure that everyone is making enough money to fund that, to not really worry about losing a strategic cruiser, and that's what we're working toward. We do offer buy-ins to the company. We offer shares. If people want to buy in, they can buy a share of the company. They become a shareholder and they take an interest in the profits that the company makes. They take a cut of all they take a slice of all the profits that are made, all the company cuts from all the other profits that are being made in the whole. One share, for us, one share is 1 billion credits. 1 billion ESC will buy you one share. Our leading shareholder has 74 shares, just to give an idea. Most of the people who have a share don't have more than 2 or 3, though. Let's see. So you outsource some of your logistics in a sense, or any other Wormhole support services you rely on non-core people for. Actually, I may have misled you there. All of our outsourcing is the same player, just on a different character in a different corporation. In other words, some of our alts are in a different corporation that's not in our alliance. So we don't really outsource it. It's us. It's just that we run it through a different name, so that it's not necessarily linked. And then there's one common pilot who we'll use contracting back and forth to give stuff at a station and be able to transfer all of our goods that way. Yeah, actually, your mining in the Wormhole is actually not so AFK because you're out in the middle of nowhere, and if you're not guarded, God hopes you're aligned, and even then, you're probably not going to survive if someone decides to jump you. So you gotta stay on D-scan, and even on D-scan, you're not going to catch the Tengus that are coming for you. In fact, we found that our mining, our grab sites are the least profitable thing in here, just because it's too risky to do it. It takes too long. It's LADAR sites are very profitable. We will set up a cap fleet for people to go out and grab all the gas. That's very profitable. Sleeper sites, we're only in a class 2. They're not that profitable. The class 3 sleeper sites that we farm are much more profitable than ours. And so a lot of our sleeper loot comes from there. As well as poor, unsuspecting class 3 people. Let's see. I think that's all the questions I've gotten to so far. If not, feel free to repeat it. Are the class 3 and below wormholes more small gang or single PvP, and the class 4 and above fleet type PvP? It tends to be that way in my experience, yeah. Remember that the mass limits on the upper end wormholes are different, so you can actually bring in larger ships and larger fleets into those wormholes, as well as you've got wormhole effects, and as well as with the complexes and everything's more profitable up there. The profit in our class 2 is not in what the class 2 offers us more than it is in, well, okay, yeah, let me reword that. The profitability is in what you can do in the wormhole. In other words, we can rig up manufacturing or things like that you can't do in safe space. That's the profitability. It's not the sleeper sites. It's not really the LADAR. Those are good. The PI is good. It's all gravy on top, but it's the vast majority of our profitability is in what we do. I've never seen a large fleet come through here. We have had days where we've had, 30 jumps. Just checking Dotland, you had 30 jumps past then. It's like, oh, well, okay, whatever. I hope they found what they were looking for. Whatever they did, they just passed through. But it's mostly small gangs. We commonly see people that just come in to, that just scan out a wormhole and come in with a Drake and a Noctis to clear out some sleeper sites and stuff like that. We see that a lot, and that's not even PvP. We will see the occasional bait. And it's pretty obvious when someone's trying to bait you. We'll see those come in, and we'll set up our own kind of propaganda stuff. Sometimes we'll put a few Tech 3s and stuff on D-Scan just to let people know that they're on our front lawn, but I think we've mostly had small gang. But I can't speak for the entire game. It's a question of, who it is. One thing that I didn't mention, we do build stuff for use in the hole. Like I said, we do have capital fleets, and we're going to be building more of that. We are in the process of building a Galente freighter inside the hole for distribution of material and reactor stuff. So a lot of people think that's sunk cost. It's not really. When it comes down to it, from my point of view, the most valuable thing in EVE is the player hour. whatever you can do to make the player hour more profitable, more fun, that's what really counts. And if it means having putting 1 billion credits into building a freighter in the hole to save people time hauling stuff from tower to tower, then that's worth it to me. And to me, that's what industry in this game really is. It's being able to figure out what you can get done, what you can do, and reducing the amount of time you have to put into it to make money and be able to fund the more active stuff you do. But like I said, sometimes the logistics, the resupply ops, those can be pretty fun because we get into a full fleet where, we're joking with each other. Most of our guys are all ex-military. I'm ex-military. So most of us are pretty organized like that. Everyone is free to do their own PI. I pay out. I have a set price on every product. So based on what you produce, I'll pay you for it. Then the company will be free to if sometimes we'll speculate, sometimes we'll hold on to it and sell it and whatnot. But we offer a price for all PI. Even with the company cut, you make far more per hour on PI than you will in HiSec. It's just, unless you're running like 6 accounts in HiSec, which you can do, and you can run factory planets and make a lot of money that way. But as far as just producing P1 stuff and just, spending 15 minutes on, it's good money. It's really good money. But it's all you. Whatever you produce is what you produce, and I'll pay you for it when you produce it. So you're on your own to go pick it up and everything. Once we have player operated customs houses, I think our mentality is we are going to set our customs houses tax-free for the reason that we would rather be able to apply market value toward what you make and what the company makes off the PI. So we won't be running taxes on our customs houses. Of course, I'm going to have to set all that up when it gets here. I'm looking forward to that, but we'll see. Ezekiel, yeah, a lot of people are worried about it. We'll see. We'll see. I think you're going to see a big change. I think if you ask, I'm not the guy who does all of our market predictions. The guy that does is incredibly good at it. He's fantastic at it. It's incredible. I've never seen anyone like it. He'll tell you exactly what the market's going to do on a certain product in a week. But our best guess and what we're gearing for right now is that the price of P1 is going to go way up. And that's going to drive a lot of other stuff. For us, that's a good thing because we produce P1, so it's a good thing. For those of you in HiSec, the pebble in a pond, man. The ripples will get out there, prices will go up on everything, and you'll be right back in business with the same profit margins as you were before. The market will survive. I try to be optimistic about everything I can, including changes CCP puts into the game. I try not to get too into anything in particular, get too attached to it. There's a lot of changes that go on in this game, and a lot of it's pretty cool. I enjoy it. I'm looking forward to when CCP finally gets off their butt and puts more Tech 3 ships and stuff in the game. A lot of what we do has to do with Tech 3 production. We make a lot of our money on Tech 3 right now. And Tech 3 is it's a great line to run. It's very freight intensive, but it's a lot of fun to run. Well, it's let's see. It's about 6:40. We've been going about an hour and a half. I think that's about all the time that I've got for this time. I will stay in chat for a few minutes to try and answer questions in chat. Unfortunately, there's we're moments away from there being a lot of noise in my living room. So I better off mumble right now. I will answer questions the best I can in chat. Hold on. Let me answer this one last question. What did you find to be your biggest pitfall or mistake as a company? What cost you the most time, money, or simply the biggest impact? I would ask that you exclude the corp theft. It's something that's difficult to quantify. The problem is you're asking me to exclude something that's a big question. The thing that's gonna make you or break you is logistics and security. That's it. If you can manage your logistics, then that's good. And if you can manage your security, that's good, because those two things will break you. And it's not just theft; it's people making a mistake. Somebody screws something up, and trust me, it'll cost you everything. Thanks for coming to the class, guys. I was actually really looking forward to this. It's first time I've given lectures like this to more than one person, so it's been I know I do a lot of ums and ahs. That's just me. Make sure to add me as a contact if you're interested. Feel free to chat me up anytime in game. We're gonna be looking for some people, as well as it's just nice to have contacts in game. So who knows? Maybe someday I'll come back and give something else, or who knows. So thanks a lot. And I will be hanging out in the chat room for a minute to type back if anyone has any more questions.